Hey everyone, hopefully this is working. Welcome to evidence-based audio number 227. This is just talking about the Jitter article from Ethan Weiner. And I know, let me also skip all the meta, but I haven't been on here much lately. Sorry about that. I have been doing some live streams, but I've been really busy working on guitars, believe it or not, and doing a lot of live shows. And I kind of, you might be able to hear I'm a little under the weather, but uh, past guest on this show and the James Randi of audio, Ethan Weiner, acoustics expert and audio expert. He actually has a book called The Audio Expert. Has a new article out about uh, jitter. Sorry, it says audio electronics, is digital jitter really a problem? And we've talked about jitter several times on the show. Maybe almost every show. And way back with Dan Lavery, I remember Dan Lavery saying that an external clock is just not going to improve the performance of your existing product by itself. The reason you use clocks is so that you can synchronize multiple units. And in here, we've talked about how have word clock or ADAT sync. Actually, been having a sync problem over the last couple of weeks. But Dan was saying that you're never going to improve the audio by externally clocking it, except for in the case of multiple devices. And the only thing you're improving is making sure they start and stop at the same time. The internal clock is always going to be better. If your internal clock is that bad, that device wasn't really functioning anyway. So let's see, if you don't know what jitter is, here's a picture. So here's where the clock pulses are supposed to be perfectly evenly timed. They start at a certain time. And then this one has jitter, where maybe some of the clock pulses are a little bit too long, too short. So they end up kind of in the wrong place. And you've heard digital clicks and pops before. Like if your clocks become completely unsynced, you get problems. But like everything else, it's where does it become audible? So let me read part of this. So the introduction to this from Ethan. You can go back on our shows and see the ones Ethan's been on. I was on a panel with Ethan and Glenn Fricker, I think twice, on Glenn Fricker's show on Spectre Sound. See, the guy knows what he's talking about. She says, since the dawn of the digital era decades ago, the timing error known as jitter in analog to digital and digital to analog converters has been accused of harming audio fidelity. Some people claim that jitter adds audible distortion and noise, affects bass fullness, and even harms stereo imaging, width, and depth. We always hear about that width and depth, right? This is an artifact that is difficult to generate artificially in controlled amounts, so there haven't been many tests. This article explains what jitter is, what causes it, and even lets you hear jitter in controlled amounts so you can decide for yourself how damaging it really is. In an earlier article, Artifact Audibility, I wrote about the audibility of various artifacts, including distortion and noise. And this is where we talked about, I think we actually covered that article or parts of it several times, but it's Ethan's main parameters, right? Distortion, noise, frequency response, bandwidth, all that stuff. And the threshold of audibility, because just because something tests a certain way doesn't mean you're going to hear it that way. So he says, several audio examples are provided so people can learn at what level artifacts can be heard using their own stereo system or headphones. Jitter is another artifact that's often complained about, but it's difficult to generate artificially in controlled amounts, so there haven't been many tests. And this is coming from a website called audioexpress.com, and it's got some good articles on it. So what is jitter? Jitter is a noise-like artifact caused by slight timing errors in the master clock that controls the transfers between analog and digital formats. Jitter occurs both during audio capture into the analog to digital converter and output from the digital to analog converter. This article will focus mostly on DAC jitter, digital analog converter jitter, because consumers and their devices have no control over jitter that's already been recorded. Jitter is specified in units of time, typically nanoseconds, the billionths of a second. This defines how early or late the clock signal might switch. Figure 1 shows the square wave output of an ideal clock at the top, then with some amount of jitter added below. In the first block, the clock's output turns on slightly late, then turns off a little earlier than it was supposed to. So, they're they're too long or too short. This type of jitter is called random because the timing deviations are more or less random based on thermal noise variations. And when you're talking down this quick, quantum time, quantum levels, I mean, I don't know if it's actually quantum, but it's pretty small. Little tiny things like heat are going to have drastic effects. So you can see this picture again. This shows how this slightly mistimed. Because even though jitter is a timing issue, it manifests as FM sidebands, noise-like artifacts that are added to the music. That's why it's expressed as a time span rather than amount of phase shift or frequency deviation. Depending on the nature of the jitter, the sidebands may be harmonically related or unrelated to the music. See, so we can talk about distortion versus noise. The spectral content can also vary. Both of these affect how audible the jitter will be when music is playing because of the masking effect. And you know how powerful masking can be, right? Noise containing frequencies similar to the music source will be less audible than noise at frequencies farther away. Absolute volume, or SPL, also affects audibility. The louder something is, the more detail we can hear clearly until the onset of compression, I think. In that earlier artifact audibility article, I made the point that jitter noise in modern digital devices is typically below the noise floor of a CD, even for inexpensive consumer-grade gear. In my experience, that is far too soft to be audible. Let me play. So he included a video. Let me play this for you. Hopefully you can hear this. Let me know if this isn't playing. So this is gonna be jitter at various levels, various amounts, and it's measured in time. Right? How much deviation is there from the ideal clock? The original. 10 nanoseconds. Microseconds. This is 1,000 times as much. Now, 100 microseconds. Okay, so I'm gonna play that again. I don't want to torture you guys, but listen to the breath, kind of the air coming out of the trumpet rather than the note, just that really high air coming out. The original. 10 nanoseconds. Hopefully at 100 microseconds, you guys are actually hearing some distortion. I kind of don't care at 10 microseconds. And I think that the performance of modern clocks is going to be less than that 10 nanoseconds anyway. Never mind the 10 microseconds. But at 100 microseconds, I'm definitely hearing something. Okay, so here's the 10 microseconds jitter by itself. 100 microseconds jitter. But what about the 10 nanoseconds jitter? They don't show it. So you can definitely hear that. With 100, you definitely can. So let's go back. Let me go back to 10 microseconds and see if we can hear that. Don't hear it. I'm sorry. Maybe I suck, man. Sorry if I'm the, whatever, noob. I don't really hear it in there, but you can definitely hear it when it's by itself. Let me, here's like a Roy Orbison thing. Yeah, here we go.
Golden days days before they end. Oh, baby won't be near you.
Now, I know everybody talks, but these old vocals, there's a distortion to them. So here's the original. Listen to the vocals.
Anymore. Golden days before they end. Whisper secrets to the wind. Your baby won't be near you anymore.
And microseconds.
Golden days before they end. Whisper secrets to the wind. Your baby won't be near you anymore. Golden days before they end. Whisper secrets.
But how much is hold on. So word clock frequency. What is the word clock frequency? Word clock. What's the frequency of word clock? Oh my god. Wow, I suck. How do I not know this? Continuous square wave pulse running at the sampling frequency. So would be at 48K. So if it was running at 48K or whatever, I thought it was like 256 times or something. If it's running that fast, 100 microseconds is actually a huge amount. How many samples is that? So that's kind of a lot. All right, so let's look at we always see these claims by all these companies that, oh man, this clock is going to clean everything up, but let's see. I'm going to go on with the article. For a given amount of jitter, the level of noise added to the audio also varies with the source frequency. Jitter affects higher frequencies more simply because the timing error is a larger percentage of the total period. So like, at the super high levels where you only have 2 samples, possibly less, let's not get into that. It's going to be way more than when you're looking at, a giant wide bass waveform where you have a pile of samples of it, right? 1 microsecond of jitter is 0.1% of the period at 1 kilohertz. Wow. Okay, so think how 1 microsecond is huge, but what is the normal amount of jitter? But 1% at 10 kilohertz. The graph, so, when you say like 10% distortion, you can definitely hear that. The graph shown in Figure 2 from The Art of Digital Audio by John Watkinson shows the amount of jitter noise you can expect at different frequencies with the noise floor of various bit depths as a reference. For comparison, jitter is typically under 0.5 nanoseconds, even with modest consumer devices. So more than 100 decibels below the music. In various audibility tests, people were unable to detect jitter unless it was greater than 30 nanoseconds. Well, I'm kind of sad because I didn't hear, in the music anyway, I didn't hear jitter at 10 nanoseconds. But if we're talking that most of them aren't even 0.5 nanoseconds, wait, what was the audio example? The lowest that they had? Oh, wow, Sultan's a Swing. Okay, hold on. Are we going to get blocked? Is Facebook, you going to block me for 15 seconds of this? Please don't. Too much, man. You're gonna get me blocked. Okay. So the lowest here, where we definitely don't hear it, is 10 nanoseconds, but they're saying that jitter is typically under 0.5 nanoseconds, so nowhere even near that. All right, so never mind. So here's a little graph is showing where you can expect to hear jitter depending on the frequency and depending on the noise floor, like how many bits you got going. Higher frequencies is easier to hear. One possible exception is jitter in the audio stream of an HDMI connection. In February 2009, British magazine Hi-Fi News published jitter measurements for 4 popular receivers. All but one had substantially more jitter in their HDMI outputs compared to their SPDIF outputs. One was as high as 7.6 nanoseconds, but still, I wasn't hearing 10 nanoseconds, so I guess I suck. Through its HDMI output compared to only 183 picoseconds through its SPDIF output. Wow. But still, that seems to fall below the level of audibility. Okay, good. This talks about what causes jitter. I don't know if that really matters to us so much. So sound on sound. Let me read it. Even when jitter is too minimal to affect perceived audio quality, it can still be measured. Yeah, lots of times we can measure stuff that we can't hear. That's why ABX tests can be really important. In June 2010, Sound on Sound magazine, SOS, this is something you guys should be subscribed to, hopefully, published an article detailing its tests of 7 external master clock products, all of which claim that their low jitter amounts improved audio quality over the clocks. I don't know if you guys remember the Big Ben fights and controversies. Kind of, for many people, it caused Apogee, who had previously kind of led the field in analog to digital converters and stuff, to lose a lot of credibility. But they're still there. All of which claim that their low jitter amounts improve audio quality over the clocks built into typical converters and sound cards. External clocks are useful in complex audio systems that contain many digital devices that need to operate together, such as in radio and TV stations or recording studios, right? We have to sync our clocks together. I don't know if you guys were watching my live streams last week, you were hearing all these clicks and pops. That was because I was having a clock problem in here. It's not because, I don't have the most superior clock. It was just that the clock signal wasn't properly reaching things. So give me 1 second. Oh, man, I don't like having this cold. Yeah. All right. But when SOS technical editor Hugh Robjohns compared the noise and distortion of several digital analog converters, he found that they all had less using their internal clocks than when connected to the external clock products. So he said about at the beginning of the show, like Dan Lavery said forever ago, you're only going to make things worse by going to an external clock if you're talking about a single device. It's when you have to synchronize multiple ones together, you need a clock. Let's see. From his conclusion, overall, it should be clear from these tests that employing an external master clock cannot and will not improve the sound quality of a digital audio system. Again, though, if you don't have something that's syncing everything, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, right? Sorry, 1 second. I have something to do with tempo mapping. I want to check something. All right. So while an outboard clock product is useful when multiple devices must be synced to the same word clock, an external clock won't improve audio quality in a typical setup with one sound card or digital analog converter. Perhaps the most important point about jitter audibility was summed up in the Audio Critic, where digital audio expert Robert W. Adams of Analog Devices wrote, traditional THD, total harmonic distortion plus noise, versus frequency tests and FFT spectrum plots for input signals of various frequencies are adequate to cover the effects caused by jitter. There is no reason to single out distortion components caused by jitter as distinct from those caused by other effects such as digital analog, nonlinearity, op-amp distortion, etc. So clearly, there's no basis for believing that jitter can affect bass fullness or stereo imaging as is commonly claimed. I guess until you get to a huge amount of jitter. Fullness is a frequency response issue that's easily verified, and imaging changes would require much larger timing errors that also differ between left and right channels. So that's another thing. Like, how's your stereo going to fall apart when they're getting moved by the same amount, right? So he gives some audio examples that we listen to. um, and here's his conclusion. Assuming you watched the video, I think the most important revelation is that even 10 times more jitter than is usual for inexpensive audio devices is innocuous and doesn't harm the music. The usual scapegoats, fullness and width, are clearly not affected by the addition of jitter noise. Even with the jitter at 10 microseconds, again, so that's like 1,000 times. Actually, what is that? 10,000 times more than you'd normally have. Or is it 20,000 times? Even with the jitter at 10 microseconds, which is huge and limits the signal to noise ratio to only 35 dB, you can appreciate the power of the masking effect. Unlike tape hiss and vinyl record crackles and pops, jitter noise is present only when the music plays, so it's always masked by the music and never audible between the songs. Then why do so many people believe that the bass response and imaging are affected by jitter? I'd say marketing. Marketing, all the nonsense you get out there with all these religious nuts. Through my research in room acoustics, I believe the acoustic phenomenon known as comb filtering is the most plausible explanation for many of the differences people claim to hear from cables, power conditioners, isolations, low jitter, external clocks, ultra-high sample rates, and so forth. Comb filtering is a type of frequency response error that occurs when direct sound from the loudspeakers combines in the air with reflections off the walls, floors, ceilings, and other nearby objects. This causes a change in the frequency response reaching your ears even across surprisingly small differences. But I don't understand why that would be. When you're an acoustician, a lot of problems look like acoustics, but I'm not sure why you would hear that with one clock versus another. I guess he's just saying when you turn your head. My earlier article, Why We Believe, explains more about this phenomenon and shows how moving your head even a few inches can change what you hear by a very large amount. The difference people hear may in fact be real, but it's not caused by changing wires or adding a power product or isolation device. And so you can download the audio file we're playing there. And in the references, there's one on ethanweiner.com that has artifact audibility. I would super highly recommend, if you're interested in audio engineering at all, get his book, The Audio Expert. I mean, it's everything we talk about here, but in painstaking detail and painful analysis paralysis, if you really want that. The other thing is he links the article from Sound on Sound. Does your studio need a digital master clock? And they test 7 of them. And as usual with SOS, man, they bring the receipts. And there were gajillions of forums out there trying to hand wave away the results here. But right, man, I am messed up. I'm sorry. My voice is getting worse and worse. I'm gonna take off. I know I haven't done a lot of these in a while, but I'll get to more of them.